As training camp nears for the Miami Heat, is another trade necessary in order to improve the roster? And specifically, is there a way of moving Terry Rozier in the next month? We'll answer that and more in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day for daily content on the Heat. Join more than 17,000 Heat fans and click that subscribe button on YouTube. Have a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to be talking about why the Heat will not be bringing back Dru Smith on a two-way contract before another segment of Locked Off Heat. But first, David, we're at the end of July here. Most of NBA business has been taken care of, but there have been some reports, some rumors, a little bit of scuttle that the Heat have tried or at least thought about trading Terry Rozier. We had the Jake Fisher report. Maybe this is the best place to start with this. That the Heat had considered trading Terry Rozier for Marcus Smart, but could not come to a consensus on whether or not that was a clear upgrade. And that's a pretty loaded report there. There's a couple of interesting angles just within that. So maybe we should just start there. When you hear that Miami had considered trading Rozier for Marcus Smart straight up, I would suppose, because the salaries are almost equal, it actually would have saved Miami some money. Probably would have gotten, I think it would have gotten Miami, it would have gotten Miami under the luxury tax. That feels like there's something missing there. That can't be the whole story. Because that to me would have been a no-brainer, if only just to avoid the luxury tax.
Yeah, I can't help but think that the Heat still view potential in Rozier. That maybe last year was just an anomaly. Because remember that stretch during I guess it was the post-All-Star break, maybe around there. I can't recall exactly when it was, but there were some head-scratching moments there where Rozier was still getting playing time, despite some really atrocious performances. And it seemed like Spo was still trying to play him. And at that point, it's not like the conspiracy theorist idea of, oh, well, you're putting him out there to increase his trade value. Like, no amount of minutes are going to increase Terry's trade value at this stage in his career. So he's playing him because he believes in him, or at least is hoping for him to turn it around, or hoping for him to be a little bit more productive. I can't say exactly what Spo's mindset was at the time. Eventually, he changes course and just benches Terry and doesn't play him for the rest of the season. I mean, that was good. I think that was beneficial for Miami to not be able to play him because he was just so bad out there on the floor. But I keep thinking that there's some kind of internal belief in that Rozier can be a productive player. And that being the case, well, we know that Smart isn't going to be. He was never putting up big numbers at any point during his career. It was just a matter of having that defensive leadership presence that was perfectly balanced along with all the other scoring options on that roster. And so you were getting something of value from Smart. So if you're looking at Rozier, if you're looking at Smart and saying, well, he can't really defend at such a high level anymore, but at least he's still a decent defender, maybe the second best perimeter defender to, say, Davion Mitchell, then they must still be a believer in Terry Rozier and him being able to provide some kind of offense that makes him of some value more than a second-tier defensive presence. That's what I'm reading into it.
I mean, you're not wrong, right? And I think even there's probably Heat fans screaming at you right now, like, how could the front office possibly think that? And I will tell you, I don't know how many people were watching a whole lot of Marcus Smart over the last couple of years, basically since he got traded from Boston to Memphis, and then from Memphis to Washington. Yeah. That guy is washed, dude. And I don't know what the Lakers think that they're getting out of Marcus Smart at this point, but the idea that, first of all, Defensive Player of the Year candidate and wrongful winner Marcus Smart, that's not him anymore. But even as a point of attack defender, that's not even his role. Like, Washington had him guarding wings last year. Like, they kind of had him in the corner guarding like non-threats at times last season. Now, Marcus Smart, injury concerns were a big part of the story the last 2 years. I think he's played less than 60 games combined over the last 2 years. So that's part of it. Conditioning, health, all of these things that come along with, nagging injuries. That's part of it. But you even go back to his final year in Boston before he got traded. He just looked different. I mean, he had lost a step. He was starting to kind of wear down at that point. Now, can the Lakers get him into better shape? LA, the whole thing. Can he go beach bod? Can he go full Luka Doncic body transformation? Maybe. And maybe he's out there more, but he's not going to be what he was. And so if you're the Heat's front office and you've actually watched Marcus Smart over the last 2 years, as crazy as this sounds, because of what we have seen from Terry Rozier this past season, the idea that you would look at Marcus Smart the last couple of years and say, we're not sure that's a clear upgrade, isn't that crazy? Like there's actually validity to that. Now, again, I would say, is there value in just moving on from the Rozier experience, considering that you had acquired Norm Powell? You don't really have a need for Rozier. You could bring in Marcus Smart. You could duck the luxury tax and all the things. Maybe. But maybe also the Heat have another plan to duck the luxury tax, so they're not all that concerned about it. They also have until the end of the regular season to do it, so maybe they're just not that concerned about it anyway because the time bomb isn't necessarily ticking. And by the way, they like Rozier in the locker room. Like Rozier is, say whatever you want about him on the court, and you could say a lot about what happened on the court with him last year. Well respected in that locker room. I would go so far as to say beloved in the locker room. No nonsense, no trouble. When he got benched, was not a concern. He's liked by the coaching staff. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean anything about Marcus Smart, but it's just they don't know Marcus. If you're the Heat, you're like, we don't really know Marcus Smart. We don't know how he would be in this locker room. What if he does get benched? And Marcus Smart, by the way, is probably getting guaranteed rotation minutes with the Lakers, which is another part of this.
My concern is that why didn't Miami make this a 3-team deal? They could move off the Rozier experience, as you put it, still get Smart, and still wind. Oh, was he bought out by the Wizards?
Out.
Okay, that's what it was. So there was just
and Luka was recruiting him. And I think that there was a certain amount of, hey, we think Marcus Smart can go play for the Lakers. And Marcus Smart wants to play, clearly. I think that's when I referenced earlier, like why there feels like there's a missing component to this report. That to me might be like how Marcus Smart feels might be the missing component. Maybe he just preferred the Lakers over Miami, and it could be just that simple. And the Wizards just tried to do right by a veteran.
Okay. No, that makes sense because I'm thinking there's no other trade out there. I think but that just kind of reinforces what you're saying. What we're both saying here is that there was zero value to Marcus Smart at this point in time. That of anything, Terry Rozier might be a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10, but that just means Smart's a 0.
Well, and then the idea that Rozier might be able to rehab his trade value and be something more than that.
It's legitimate.
If you had to ask yourself who has more trade value realistically in February, Marcus Smart and let's assume he didn't get bought out. He got traded and he's still at making $22 million, whatever he was making.
Right.
Or versus Rozier at $26 million. So basically the same salary. Who has more trade value in February? Smart or Rozier? It would not be crazy to be like, yeah, Rozier had a little bit of a bounce back. He's looking better. We can actually move him on an expiring. Versus Marcus Smart, who's probably going to get hurt again. And so if you're Miami also, you're thinking that. But in terms of do the Heat still need to make a trade, do you think that there is an urgency to trade Rozier?
I think so. I don't think that there's a need to fill anything on the roster necessarily because you're not going to get that much of value. So I think there's an urgency to move Rozier in the hope that he can go and maybe even more as a benefit to another team. And then what you get back might be just pennies on the dollar, but at least it's something of value, maybe a draft collateral, a second-round pick, anything. Because I think that's where his greatest value lies. Because, again, I don't think you look at this roster. We talked about this in yesterday's episode. They're pretty deep. You're not going to get a $26 million value in terms of any kind of actual player that you'll be receiving in return for Terry Rozier. So that being the case, it's more to just alleviate some of the glut on this roster, get him elsewhere, and then just be able to get something of value. Because I also don't know that Rozier is going to be getting a significant amount of playing time. It would have to be one hell of a bounce back. Like we talked about this already. I know that there's the possibility, and maybe it's as simple as making it a best case scenario. Terry has a great training camp, goes and shows out. He's back at full strength. He's attacking. He's driving to the rim. He can't be stopped. His shot looks as good as it ever has.
Yeah.
And he winds up being a productive spark plug off the bench. That's his best. Because other than that, he's not going to be better in any world or scenario than Norm Powell or Tyler Hero, not at this stage of his career. So what are you looking to get from him? At best would be, I think, against somebody who might be able to play 10 minutes, 15 minutes off the bench and provide a little offensive spark in the backcourt.
Right. And then maybe a team talks themselves into him with they've suffered an injury in their backcourt or something, or maybe they're just trying to get off a long-term salary and they say, you know what, Rozier can walk in, maybe score a few points for us, and he's an expiring salary in February.
And in that sense, he definitely has more value too, just because he's a larger contract than Marcus Smart is. So if you're looking to move large salaries at the trade deadline, $26 million is better than $22 million.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree. I don't think that I think they're exploring Terry Rozier trades. I would not qualify their willingness to try to move Rozier as urgent. I don't think that because there's an understanding. Like, first of all, they're not going to attach assets to get off of Rozier. Now, would they attach assets to Rozier in order to make a roster upgrade? For sure. Yeah, absolutely. They would, depending on what the roster upgrade was. But just trying to dump him and attach assets to do that, the Heat are not going to do that because they know that he's expiring. And that could just come off the books at the end of the year. So why would you do that? They're not that concerned. And again, well-liked in that locker room. He's not going to cause any locker room issues if he's not playing, not based on these last season and a half that he's been there. So they're not concerned about that either. Meanwhile, it turns out that Dru Smith won't be signed to Miami's final two-way spot. We'll tell you why after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, you can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Listen, it's so much more convenient. You can have an app that controls everything when it comes to managing your money. That's what you'd like in terms of your day-to-day finances. And if you're working towards a specific goal, maybe there's a big purchase, maybe saving for college tuition, maybe it's a new car or a new house, whatever you're looking for, then you're probably going to need some help in managing your money. And that's where an app like Monarch Money comes in. They do everything so easy. It makes it so easy for you to stay on track with your goals. So right now is the best time to download. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. You get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I want to get to this report from the Miami Herald. This is according to Anthony Chang, who did a good bit of reporting on this. Dru Smith, turns out, cannot be signed to a two-way deal with the Heat because of an NBA rule, because he had spent 3 other seasons with the Heat on a two-way contract, therefore making him ineligible to sign with Miami on a two-way. Now, he's still eligible to sign a two-way contract, even with the NBA experience rule. He just would have to do it with another team. Now, Dru Smith, coming off of the injury that ended his season, was really coming on strong before the injury, and it really is a shame. Had he stayed healthy, he probably ends up getting that standard roster spot that ultimately went to Kashad Johnson. Not probably, he was going to have that, and then he got hurt. And then maybe Terry Rozier isn't playing as far into the season as he did, just because Spo just didn't have that many backcourt options at that point. But now it seems like this could be the end of the road for Dru Smith in Miami. I will say this. They can still sign him to the open 15th roster spot. He can't sign the two-way, but they can give him a minimum contract to come back and be part of the 15-man roster. But as we've already talked about, they're already over the luxury tax. They're 1.3 over the tax now, 1.3 million over the tax now. If you sign him to what I think it's like a $2.6 million would be the minimum, something around there. Okay, now you're upwards of almost $4 million over the luxury tax. still pretty small, but just something else that you have to consider if you're Miami and you're planning to duck the luxury tax. It's just another factor in that. So, what do you think, Dru Smith? Like, we had talked about him probably having the inside track on that two-way spot. Turns out he's not even eligible for that because of this, kind of random NBA rule.
Yeah, I just don't see. I don't see his career extending with Miami, unfortunately, because I think you've invested a lot of time in him, and I think that's part of it. Like, we were all kind of scratching our heads at why he was brought on a contract last year as well, and eventually he wound up living up to that value. We couldn't understand exactly why Dru Smith kept getting opportunities, but we heard so many positives from Spo and the coaching staff, and how much they believed in him and how much they loved his work ethic and his tenacity. And maybe on court we couldn't really see much from him, but eventually there was a moment there where he was a very valuable player, I would say. Like, he was creating defensive miscues. He was doing a lot of
there
work.
Was a point where he was one of Miami's best 4 or 5 players.
He was. For spurts. But like, you looked forward to the Dru minutes because it was going to be a representing a positive swing in Miami's favor, and that was pretty scary to think. But yeah, there was, like, his defense, not just that, but his also his shooting too. Like, he would hit a couple threes in a row, force a couple of turnovers, and next thing you know, it was a 10-0 run led by Dru Smith. Like, nobody saw that coming, and he was extremely valuable in that sense. So, like, you could understand then why the team had such belief in him. And they've invested all this time and everything else in a guy like Dru. And I think they'd love to be able to keep him, but I also think they're counting their pennies. So this kind of ties into what we were talking about in the first segment. Does that add a level more of desperation to Miami to move Terry Rozier, knowing that if they can move Terry Rozier and somehow wind up getting a little cap flexibility, is that enough to sign a guy like Dru onto the roster? I don't know.
I think so, right? I think if you can move Rozier, then suddenly you kind of need another guy who, yes. I don't know if he's going to play every night, but you look at, to me, you have 3 guards on this roster who are guaranteed minutes. Tyler Hero, Norm Powell, Davion Mitchell. After that, it's Terry Rozier, Yakachonis, Pelle Larsson, if you want to consider him a guard, is sort of in that mix. Yeah. He's more of a wing. But in terms of ball handler types, yeah, it's really just Hero, Powell, Mitchell. And then after that, Rozier, Yakachonis. Like, if Dru Smith were on the roster, he would be competing with those guys.
No doubt.
Like, Dru Smith, if he looks anything like he did before the injury, and now these are 2 major lower body injuries in 2 years for Dru Smith. So I don't know what he looks like coming on the other side of this. But if he looks like what he did before this past injury, he's better than Rozier and he's better than Yakachonis right now. So he could compete for minutes potentially there. And that's not a bad thing to have. But right. Yeah, I think that's got to be an option. I don't know who out there in the NBA is signing Dru Smith. I think they're going to want to see what he looks like coming back from an injury. It's a shame that he wasn't part of any summer league programs or anything like that. I still would not be shocked if he were part of Miami's training camp, because he could still sign an Exhibit 10. As far as I know, there's no NBA rules against that. So he could sign an E10, do the base, which is essentially a training camp deal. He could sign that with Miami, come back, and then maybe the word spreads that he looks good, and maybe he lands on a 2-way somewhere else, right? Like, we know Brooklyn picked him up at one point, so maybe that's something that they would revisit, or whatever. Right? He's got
they can't. They drafted 5 point guards.
That's true. Well, what's stopping them from adding another? They clearly don't care. Yeah, I think I wouldn't rule out the training camp thing, and I wouldn't rule out the 15th roster spot. We have some time between now and the start of the season. If something happens on the Rozier front, maybe there's some money that shakes loose there. But let's talk a little bit more about the 2-way spot, though, because if it's not going to Dru Smith, then who's it going to? And when we talked about them signing Myron Gardner, the 2 names that we had mentioned that were maybe the runner-ups for that 2-way spot, which we at the time thought was the final 2-way spot because we assumed Dru Smith was getting the other one. Right. The 2 names that we brought up were Javonte Cook and Eric Stevenson. So maybe one of these 2 guys, maybe there's room now to get one of these 2-way spots.
Yeah, I would assume so. Or perhaps somebody kind of shakes free elsewhere around the league. We've seen Miami do that as well. Has Josh Christopher signed with anybody? Or do you think Miami's?
Well, he's ineligible for a 2-way also because of his years of experience.
Exactly. Okay. Unfortunate there. So I mean, it just I'm sure they'll do their due diligence. I'm sure they have some names from Summer League that they really like that were playing for other teams, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen as well. As much as they appreciate having somebody in house that they can just say, okay, this is our person, and we're going to continue to develop, and we like what we've seen from him up close. They also are believers in, well, okay, he was productive elsewhere, so we still think
they're not afraid to do that. We've seen it time.
No.
You know, we just saw it with Myron Gardner a little bit, even though he was part of Miami's Summer League team, but he was with the Magics before that. What if they got another center? What if they just two-weighted up with the centers? Just hey, we don't have a real center on the roster, but we have two-way guys. That's 100 games that we can have now between the two-way players. That's all the depth we need.
I would not like that. I would not like that. No, I'm serious. Like I think, look, I don't know that I don't know that Kevin Love was the best option as your backup center, but I guess in terms of everything else that he was adding, from the 3-point shot ability to the leadership role that he played, at least there was something of value there. As much as I also love the idea of giving a young player a two-way contract for them to build towards something that could translate towards an NBA career, and I love that idea. I also the center position is still too thin, and it just, you need somebody. Like, I don't know if Golden's going to pan out. We haven't really seen enough of him to determine that. Like, there's potential there possibly.
In the NBA. We like him, but we don't know.
So I would rather that be used on a veteran player more than anything else. And I know that there aren't a lot of options available now, but it feels like there's probably got to be somebody better than just somebody you could bring in on a two-way contract.
So I think eventually we'll see who shakes loose after some roster cuts. There's still some teams across the league that have too many players on their roster, and then training camp will happen, and then there's going to be other roster cuts, and maybe they pick somebody up at that point.
I think so.
Also, Miami will also look at people in training camp and make some sort of determination. Now, maybe they go out and sign Myron Gardner at this point because they thought, hey, he's getting some interest somewhere else. This is me just hypothesizing here. Yeah. One of the ways that some of these two-way things work out, though, is that the agent reports like, hey, so-and-so is thinking about my client for a two-way. If you want to keep him here, you're going to have to offer him a two-way. And a lot of times teams will do it because, remember, teams can just swap out these two-ways whenever they want. It doesn't impact the salary cap. So you can just sort of do it, pay the guy for a while, and just be like, okay, like, we'll move on if we feel like we have to. But I think, you know, if that doesn't happen, then I think we get into training camp. Maybe there's guys competing. Again, you can sign guys to two ways, and then they can lose that spot in training camp. Like, we're not going to really know who's on these two ways until after the preseason. Miami has also swapped these out right before the regular season quite a few times, actually. Yeah. So they usually have like a list of 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that they're thinking about on these two ways. But just some names, just for Heat fans to keep an eye on: Eric Stevenson, Javonte Cook, and I would also look at Dane Danger from he was played center a lot for the Heat in Summer League and had some played really hard. Heat coaching staff liked him a lot. Little undersized, 6'9", 255, kind of has that like Tristan Thompson type of body, but they like what he brought to the table there in Las Vegas. All right, coming up, Locked Off Heat. It's our new favorite segment. It's called Locked Off Heat, where we talk about anything other than the Miami Heat. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions via the Locked On Heat Insider community on Subtext. If you want to join the Locked On Heat Insider community, you could do that with the link in the show notes. We got a couple of questions here that are not Heat related. Cody writes in, what are your favorite beers / cocktails? David, you're a dark beer guy.
I am. I prefer stouts, porters. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I necessarily have a favorite. There was a beer that was no longer available. I used to love it. It was an espresso stout made from a Japanese brewery called Hitachino, and it was available via Total Wine, and I used to buy it whenever it was possible, and then it just kind of stopped. There's another beer that I used. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's really heartbreaking. When you find like a beer that is just like, that's the one I want, and you're going into a store, like my heart literally breaks for you thinking about the time you walked into Total Wine and you couldn't find it.
Yeah.
That's tough.
No, it didn't happen again too. COVID related both times. I think they just, the breweries, just these small breweries that just couldn't continue producing stuff. So it was Anderson Valley oatmeal stout. Now they still make them, but they make them in cans, and I don't know why. Because I know that everybody says cans don't make that much of a difference, but I cannot drink beer out of a can. I'm a little bit of a snob that way. To me,
So
there's
there are
a
some
metal
beers
taste
that I
there.
can drink out of a can.
Okay, let's hear it.
And there's other beers that I feel like I had a whole long list prepared, and I really don't. It's just PBR.
Okay,
That's one that kind of
that's more vibe than anything else.
yeah. Well, sure, whatever. But it's one that I could, whatever reason, I don't care what the reason is, but yeah, it's a PBR that I can't. My buddy bought us in college. He's like, hey, we were gonna meet. We were gonna go to a house party. He's like, I got us PBR. I was like, cool. And he shows up and he's got a 6-pack of PBR in a bottle. And I was like, what, did you get a job or something? What's going on?
Where's your time, Mr. Executive?
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
I thought we were
drink
going
these in the corner office
24
or something?
PBRs in a can for $10. Why do you got these bottles? Had a bottle caps. You had to use a bottle opener and everything. It was crazy. It was crazy. You got a favorite cocktail? Or are you like if you have to, you're in a fancy schmancy place and you're ordering a cocktail, what's your go-to?
I'm trash in that regard. To be honest with you, I'm not a fancy cocktail kind of guy. I drink rum and Coke mostly, but I've been known to at least pound a few of the bartender's nightmare, which is the Long Island iced tea.
We
never
have
got
had those
past it.
conversations off air.
Yep, had a few of those.
In terms of my favorite beer, I'm very boring. And I used to love, when I used to live in the Bay Area, that's like IPA Central. You know, you got Sierra Nevada up there, Lagunitas, like some of the really big breweries. And I've been to both breweries and I used to love that stuff. I had a real like taste for IPAs and I loved them. But then eventually I can't drink these anymore. So I am a closer to water, the better kind of beer guy. Just give me Mick Ultra, Miller Lite, Bud Light. Just give me whatever has something that has light in the name. I'm good. Like I'm fine. Just give me that low calorie, watery, just tailgating beer. That's my sweet spot. That's what I drink. In terms of cocktails, I'm not a big cocktail guy. Like I'll like an old fashioned every once in a while. I much prefer just give me a bourbon on the rocks or a Scotch straight. That's really if I'm drinking hard liquor, I just pretty much do it straight or on the rocks. That's pretty much it.
Now I'm hoping for a couple of things here. I'm hoping one, everybody's listening so that, you know, eventually when we do have our watch parties again, we can all share these drinks together. That would be the greatest thing. And then secondly, if you see us out and about town and you want to buy us a drink, now you know exactly what to get us. So
you don't even have to ask. You could just do it.
It's a win-win. It's like, I know you're the stout guy. Here you go. Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, even if I've got like one or even if I've had like several, I'll take another one. There's no peer pressure here, buddy. All
right, last one here. Kevin writes in, who would survive a zombie apocalypse longer, Wes or David? I don't really want to compete with you on this. But I will say
Dave heads. I don't
what would be your skill? Like you're in the group, you know, like because zombie apocalypse, most of these shows and movies, like you have a group, you have like half a dozen people, and everybody has a skill. Like you have the one guy who's the driver. You know somebody. There's some person that knows like first aid or something. You have a leader kind of guy, like that's sort of the governor of the group. What would be your skill?
Not the governor, no, because you don't want to use that. I mean, the governor, as far as The Walking Dead is concerned.
Oh, that's right. That was a villain.
Yeah, he was a psychopath. He kept zombie heads in jars in his room so he could feed his zombified daughter. So no,
spoiler alert.
Sorry, spoilers out there. Yeah, sorry, I should have put that first. If you haven't seen it by now, it's been 10 years. I figure you would have seen it. Skill set, I guess more of a leader guy. I guess I would think. I try to think of myself as being more of the calm. I can kind of see things a little bit, and a jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing. So in that sense, I kind of view myself that way. But I'll be honest with you, I'd be so worried about my family at this point. I probably would have just gotten eaten within the first few minutes. That's the thing with the apocalypse. So you're seeing family members getting devoured. It doesn't really put you in the frame of mind to be like, you know what? Here's plan A. Let's go here and figure this out. You're not in any kind of headspace to be like.
Well, that's why all these movies start with like your loved one getting eaten. It's as soon as that's somehow, it, like you're almost like it's fight or flight, right? My wife has already told me my wife has this thing where when we're sitting down watching something, she puts us into the movie or the show.
Yes.
every single time, no matter how crazy it is. It could be a zombie thing, which will never happen. And she'll just be like, what would
You
you
never
do
know,
if a
Wes.
zombie ate me first? And I'm like, what's the right answer? Do you want me to tell you that I would fight in your honor, or do you want me to just be
No.
like, I would just
You have to
no,
throw
it's not.
yourself towards
Throw
them.
yourself.
You have
That's
to
not correct.
It's like, we're gonna eat together, baby. That's
Yep.
it. That's the way to go.
So yeah, that's why that happens. But I'm trying to think of what I think I would just be the driver. I would just be the driver guy.
Who's driving anywhere? You're not driving. I mean,
You gotta find gasoline and get into the Jeep Wrangler and just floor it
You're
into
not
some of these
driving
zombies.
anywhere. Like there's cars on the side of the road. All roads are blocked because the drivers have been half eaten. Like
Right.
people just get out of the cars as soon as you see zombies running towards you. The roads are no longer safe. That's the thing too. I like to think of myself as being able to be like the kind of lone guy who's just maybe more like the Daryl of the Walking Dead kind of thing. It's just like
Okay.
do my own thing. I just kind of I'll float around in the background and I'll figure things out, stay one-on-one. But I got a 6-year-old. I can't be doing too much of that. Like he's gonna be like, "Oh, Dad, look at that!" And next thing you know, we're like drawing attention from hundreds of zombies. So it's you can't really play the lone wolf when you have somebody like that.
I think I'd be the cook.
You're not. There's no cooking either. Like I love
I
all
would be the
this.
guy
Like,
who finds food, and I'm very good at like making
you're
sandwiches.
You're Glenn then. Glenn, like in The Walking Dead. You know which one Glenn is? He's the guy who was like he was the expert forager. He
Yeah.
was really good at
Okay.
finding things.
That's me. I'm a forager. I know, like, I could figure that out. I'd be like, hey, we're gonna eat these berries.
Okay.
And I don't even know. I would have a guinea pig. to make
Oh
sure
my
that the
God.
berries
So
wouldn't
you're
kill
like
anybody.
testing people. It's like, yeah, these berries are fine. It's like, and then when
Exactly.
one member of your party kills over, it's like,
Maybe not.
I'll
My bad.
report. Yeah, the berries were in fact not fine. My apologies.
If you could pick one Heat player on the current roster to be part of your zombie apocalypse survival group, who would you pick?
That is a really tough one because my thought process was Bam at first because stout of body, stout of mind. So you definitely thought maybe that, but he's also so big. And my feeling also that he's so worried about his mama, who's not going to survive the zombie apocalypse. And I hate to break it to you, but at her age, it just doesn't seem realistic. She looks tough as nails, but I can't imagine. And if
maybe she would, you don't know.
You're absolutely right, but just elderly women tend not to be survivors of zombie apocalypse. If the literature and movies have taught me anything, Wes, and that's all we're going on here. Like, there's no basis of reality.
That's fair.
But you don't see a lot of elderly women being like, "Yeah, I survived the zombie apocalypse."
I think this is a pretty clear answer.
I don't know. I might be Eric Spoelstra, but he might be worried about his kids too. Other than that, my thought was actually Pelle Larsson. I think he brings a little European savvy to it. I could see him being a guy who just really could do a lot. But other than that,
I think it's Davion Mitchell.
That's who I was going to say. Those are my two picks.
It's Davion. It's off night.
Pelle.
He's blocking the zombies.
Survivor.
My point of attack defender. He's keeping the zombies out of the group.
He's stout.
He's stout, right? He's not going to attract a ton of attention. He's fast. He's really fast. Super athletic.
You don't want anybody too tall because they're going to bring attention. You know? And then there's longer limbs. You don't want that 6'7" wingspan. You don't want that because, that just means more room for them to latch on and bite a hand or a forearm. The next thing you know, you've got a zombie in your party. You don't want that. So you want small, compact, stout. And you're right. I think Davion Mitchell fits the profile.
Glad we settled that. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast. So there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You took